Gospel for today comes from the book of Luke. It is familiar to you, but hear this story anew. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the wealth that will belong to me. So he divided his assets between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant region, and there he squandered his wealth in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took the place throughout that region, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that region, who sent him to the fields to feed the pigs. He would have gladly filled his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. The father ran and wrapped his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, starting with like this speech that he had prepared, right? Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost, and now he's found. And they began to celebrate. Oh, if only the story ended there, that'd be really sweet and nice, huh? Now the elder son was in the field, and as he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound. Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, listen, for all these years, I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. And yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I may celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your assets with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him. Then the father said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found. This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. This is one of the most famous parables for a reason, right? Like, it's just so good. It's Jesus, like at his most masterful storytelling. It's such a vivid and relatable story. We've all been the younger son, right? At some point in our lives, thinking we can make it on our own. All right, I can do this. I don't need you, Father. I don't need you, brother. I'm just going to go out and do it on my own. How many of you have done something like that and then have found yourself having to crawl back and eat your words? Sure, maybe not hard up enough to want to eat pig slop, but I know I've squandered plenty in my life. And the hope and the prayer when we do is that we are met with the kind of welcome and celebration the Father gives. That whoever we might have wronged doesn't dwell on the insult or the injury or the loss, but rather is simply grateful for our presence. How many of you have been like the older son? This is who has my heart, right? Like older son. As much as it pains me to admit, his particular brand of resentment and entitlement feels normal, like feels pretty comfortable for me. We've all griped about people getting something we thought they didn't deserve. Student loan forgiveness, right? Like this is what we're experiencing as a country right now. We've all whined and thrown tantrums and refused to celebrate others because we feel slighted. The hope and prayer when we're in that space is that we are met with the same kind of compassion and love and reassurance that the Father gives, reminding us that we too have a place in the relationship, have a place in the community, that resources are not a finite thing, but rather infinite. Or in the words of Mom Tiger from Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, there's time for you and your brother too, right? It's a 2-year-old's baptism. I had to work Daniel in somehow. And I think maybe less often, but maybe on our best days, some of us have been like the Father, where we are just so happy to have our son or our friend or our loved ones back in our lives. We instinctively offer forgiveness and celebration in the same breath. Or where we've seen the hurt of others and have tried to walk that balance between expressing compassion and calling them to see the bigger picture. I know I don't do that with nearly as much grace as this Father does, but it is the kind of love I hope and pray to exhibit on my best days. Today, I am so excited. We get to baptize Ben. He is my first baptism as pastor here in Hot Meadow. That's what we get when a pandemic hits, right? And baptisms are like top 3 my favorite things I get to do as a pastor, right? There are the obvious reasons, adorable children being the top one, right? It involves extended friends and family who get to see the community of the baptized in a new way. And there's cake. So like always good. It's a time where there's always some sort of party or celebration in the style of breaking out the fatted calf. But on a deeper level, I think there are very few things in this world that are as clear of an example of God's prodigal love than baptism. Ben is only 2, so while that means I'm sure his parents would say he has his moments of selfishness, right? Like in tantrums, right? It happens. He has really done nothing to the level of these sons in our story. And yet, just like the Father saw the Son from way far off and came running down, God comes running down to meet Ben today, here in this water with us as the community that surrounds him and will be with his Spirit his whole life long. The promise of this day is that God loves Ben even more than that Father loved both of his sons, even in their worst moments. God will love Ben not only today, but in his worst moments. That has always been true. It doesn't like start today, right? God has known and loved Ben with that sort of prodigal extravagance from the foundations of this world, but this water seals it and gives us an excuse to have a party to mark it. We use things in the ritual of baptism like water, and we have oil and a candle. We use those today in the same way the Father calls for the robe and the ring and the fatted calf. These are tangible signs of something really intangible, this deep, deep love of God. When inevitably Ben has moments or days or years where he thinks he can go it alone and find himself without anyone, right? God forbid he runs away, but or when he finds himself stuck in that cycle of resentment, he will be able to remember this day, to go back to these signs, to feel water, to make the sign of the cross on his forehead, to light a candle. And he will be able to remember that he is loved and he has a place where he belongs. These are gifts to him and to you, Liz and David, as his parents, to help him practice that reminding, and maybe in the process help you remember that you too are beloved and belong. And you, people of God, this community of hot metal, even if it's your first time in the door, hi, welcome. You're a part of us now for this day. And how fitting that we do this on All Saints Day, where we remember that this community is just a small sliver of the great community of faith that we enter into in baptism. But you all here will give voice to promises to Ben and Liz and David in just a bit, to be a place where that prodigal love of God is the foundation, where they can all come back to again and again to feel loved and celebrated. And we won't do it perfectly, like, hi, we're a community of people. Sorry, we don't do it right all the time, but we will on our best days. And we don't rely, and when we don't, when we fail, when we are whatever humans, we then rely on a God who does do this perfectly, who sees us off in the distance and comes running down the road to meet us with open arms and a forgiving heart. Hi, Ben. May this day, this baptism of this cutie, remind you of your own and of how deeply God loves you. In just a few minutes, you're so ready. He's like, this is my spot. In a little bit, Wiley and I are going to sing a song I discovered this week from one of my new queer Christian obsessions, Rachel Kurtz. Someone else wrote it. It's called On the Day You Were Born. The opening line, which as soon as I heard her sing it, I was like, oh, yes, this is the song for today. The opening line is, on the day you were born, I danced over you. I invite you to hear that as God saying that to you, celebrating and rejoicing as a loving parent, just your mere existence. And the chorus that you'll hear is freedom, freedom, freedom to dance and sing. When we know the love of the father or mother, when we know the love of the king. I think that sums up what this day is all about. When we experience prodigal love, extravagant promises of grace and mercy, when we hear those in the waters, that frees us from all the other stuff that's weighing us down. I'm sick of this stuff. Are you? We get to lay it down in the water and be free. And if we can just glimpse, even for a moment, how wonderful that is, we can't help but dance. So Ben, hi, and all you beloved, may you know that in the water of baptism, you too are robed with grace upon grace upon grace. You too have a ring of deep and abiding prodigal love and a peace that surpasses all understanding, because God rejoices in you. Amen.